Season's hellos from Mr. JWags channel in the Dohyo. 'Tis the season for a year in sumo review. Season salt throw.
Throw the salt, get in the ring. Welcome to the Dohyo.
Hello and welcome back to the Dohyo on Mr. JWags channel. It has been a year. I mean that like literally in the sense that like it's been a year of 2020, but it's also been a year for us at the Dohyo, and also like it's been a year. So yes, this is our 2020 year in review, where we talk about the year in sumo and the predictions I made way back in January, see how those ones hold up. We talk about whose year it has been and how the story of sumo has been shaped by the 5 chapters I guess we got this year, and that's its own chapter in itself that, for the first time in a while, we did not hold a basho. But of course, we're going to do some year-end sumo shoutouts for the men who went intai this year, who retired. We, of course, start at the top of the list with Ozeki Goeido, longtime Ozeki, who, of course, was one of the stars of the recent sumo documentary Sumo-Do, so if you are a Goeido fan, check that out. It's a great way to see Goeido wrestle again. As we said in the recap episode for the last Basho, Kotoshogiku, of course, former champion and former Ozeki, recently hung it up, as did Georgian Gagamaru. We had crowd favorite Toyonoshima hang it up for the last time this year, and possibly our greatest modern Sekiwake, Tochiozan, also went intai this year after a trip back down to Juryo. Now, the one fact of the year in sumo that sort of like brings it all into a synecdoche, as it were, English minor, that we had 5 tournaments and we had 5 different tournament winners. And they were people we did not expect for the large part. I don't think anyone expected Tokushoryu at all. Shodai at the beginning of the year was not someone anyone was looking at to break out and become an Ozeki. Terunofuji was still in Juryo at the beginning of the year, and in fact spent the first 2 tournaments in the lower division. The story of 20th century sumo tends to be the story of 1 or 2 alpha dogs fighting out for dominance. This is something I've, of course, mentioned before, and something you've probably noticed if you've been following sumo for a while. And the problem we now have is that Hakuho, the alpha dog's alpha dog, has taken so many wins and has pulled so many victories from other people and sort of lessened their ability to impact the legacy of sumo. We now sort of have a world without any alpha dogs because of the sheer length and intensity of Hakuho's dominance. We've missed maybe 2 or 3 generations of sumo alpha dogs. And our current alpha dogs still have Hakuho living rent-free in their heads, so as long as he hasn't retired, I feel that sumo in some way is always going to be held back in the shadow of Hakuho, to coin a phrase. And then we come back to the second fact, which sort of encapsulates the year, is that we're sort of ending this year the same way we ended last year. With 2 Yokozuna we're not sure are going to make it to the next tournament, 2 Ozeki who we're not sure are going to be Ozeki for very much longer, and Takakelsho's looking kind of good at the end of the year. Except this time, of course, Takayasu has already been demoted back down and has worked his way back up into Sanyaku. Goeido retired last year. Now, of course, we have the situation where Takakelsho is still the Ozeki, but we have 2 Kataban Ozeki starting off next year's tournament, which is going to create the Thunderdome of January, and we're going to talk about that before the tournament. And the third sort of grouping of facts that bring home the year of 2020 to me is that the average, since the modern era of sumo began, the average completion rate for Ozeki to finish a tournament was between 80 and 90%. Since the beginning of 2017, not a single Ozeki has finished more than 2/3 of their tournaments. And in fact, 3 of our last 4 Ozeki have gone Kyujo in their very first tournament at Ozeki. So the story currently seems to be, the top rankers we have the talent, but are they going to show up? Who is going to show up enough to become the next alpha dog? Those of you who've been here from the beginning of the channel, this was, I think, my 2nd episode. So yeah, if any of you remember this episode, we are going to be digging way back. My first bold prediction at the beginning of the year was we will have no Yokozuna this year, and I was right. We did not have anyone who could sort of break out of the pack enough, even though we only had 1 tournament where both Yokozuna finished. My second prediction was that none of the people who were Ozeki in 2019 were going to be Ozeki at the end of 2020. And I was right about Goeido and Takayasu, but I was wrong about Takakelsho. I thought Takakelsho was going to end up going Kataban and drop out of the Ozeki ranks, as he has done already once before, but he managed to be able to get his Kachikoshi and come back out before immediately going Kyujo again, and then managed to finish the year with a Jun Yusho and a Yusho, so JWags was wrong on that one. I said that we were going to have one new first-time Yusho winner in 2020, and I was wrong about that. We started with a bang with Tokushoryu, and that sort of meant that the rest of the year I had no wiggle room. But when it comes down to it, that third prediction and this fourth prediction, my fourth prediction was there will be 2 new Ozeki, Asanoyama plus 1. I had 4 people who I thought could possibly be Ozeki. Mitakeyumi, Daisho, Hokutofuji, and Abi. It was the beginning of the year. No one knew. But Shodai wasn't even on my radar. So Shodai, charging in, making an Ozeki running winning Yusho, has sort of been, was my blind spot in the year. Didn't see it coming at all. And we're going to talk a little more about Shodai in a second. All right, it's time for the year-end 2020 sumo rankings. These are sort of the rankings I have to sort of say not who was necessarily the best wrestler, but whose year was 2020. First, a couple dishonorable mentions. Number 1, Abi. Abi, what were you thinking? Of course, Abi, the very young, talented, but foolish Rikishi, who broke COVID protocol and has now been suspended for 2 tournaments. He's got 1 more, and then he'll be working his way back up for Makashita, hopefully with a lot more maturity and personal responsibility. And my second dishonorable mention, not dishonor in sort of the Japanese sense of the word dishonorable, but more of a disappointing mention. Mitakeyumi. I've been a huge fan of Mitakeyumi for years, and this was his 3rd consecutive year where we thought he might get Ozeki, and it didn't happen. And I know, obviously, Mitakeyumi is trying his best, and Mitakeyumi's in a small stable where he's the only guy in the Makauchi division. It must be hard to train with COVID restrictions. But yeah, we were all expecting a lot out of him this year, and we were hoping he would have been a bit more of the story. Couple honorable mentions. Honorable mention number 1, Tokushoryu. That was such an amazing story, and he's such a cool guy. It was just such a joyous thing to be able to watch. It was just amazing to see someone at the very bottom of the Bansuke who no one had on the radar come in and win 14 matches and take the first tournament. It was such a great story. So happy for him. And the other honorable mention is Shobushi, who was our only COVID casualty in the sumo world. So of course we want to send out love. We hope that this is the last time something like this is going to happen. We have 3 wrestlers who sort of burst onto the scene in 2020 that I'm going to be locking in on for 2021. Now, I did not know much about these guys before this year. Number 3, twobyzero, the flying monkey. He is amazing. He is so much fun to watch. I love his energy. I love that he looks so angry when he wins and he looks so happy when he loses. I love that he's a little bit squirrely, but I also love that he seems to be very powerful and isn't afraid to go chest to chest with some of the bigger guys in sumo. He may not be able to stick in the Joy-Jin, he may never make the Sanyaku, but he is going to be interesting for as long as he stays in Makauchi. Number 2, Takanosho. Now, Takanosho has been in the top division for a bit, but he's been under the radar for me, and now he's sort of burst into the Sanyaku. Now I started paying a lot more attention. I see a guy who has good instincts, who has a good sumo body, but is not quite at the level of consistency he needs to be at yet. Going to be very interested to see his 2021. And of course, my number 1, my rookie of the year 2020, Kotoshoho. Yep, my pick for the next Yokozuna dark horse. I think that this young man has shown an incredible sumo intelligence. He has great ring sense. He has the Yokozuna type body that we've come to love from Kakuryu, Harumafuji, and Hakuho. And he seems to have the same sort of learning computer mentality that we've seen out of Asanoyama. But he seems to have a little bit of the swag that it takes to get you through the ranks and maybe make that top rank. Get your belt. So Kotoshoho may not be winning any tournaments next year, but I would not be surprised if Kotoshoho makes the Sanyaku next year. And now the Dohyo brings you their 2020 Rikishi ranks. Whose year was 2020? Well, coming in at number 5 is the greatest of all time, Hakuho. Now, Hakuho was only in 1 tournament from the beginning to the end. and he won it. But whether or not Hakuho was going to be in the tournament was always in the news. It was always hanging over everything. No one is going to be able to take the throne until we are able to resolve Hakuho's career and put it into the proper context. So, is 2021 going to be Hakuho's final year? I think it's going to be, but we'll get more to that in the predictions for the January Thunderdome coming up. I personally would love to see Hakuho stay through the Olympics, and as long as his body is allowing him to produce sumo at a high level without too much residual pain, then yeah, Hakuho, go nuts. Number the 4th, Asanoyama. He made Ozeki this year and then promptly kept getting about 10 wins per tournament. He's been very, very consistent, a thing that is very underrated to do in sumo, but he hasn't shown anything in his sort of profile or in his, I guess, the swag I was talking about with Kotoshoho that shows that he has another level that is going to get him to multiple Yusho, 2 in a row, a Yokozuna rope. In fact, what I have seen from Asanoyama is, in a year where we had virtually no Yokozuna in the tournaments, he couldn't win a single tournament. And unfortunately, now we've seen he's gotten hurt for the first time. So, it's a soft tissue injury, hopefully he'll be bouncing back strong, but if Asanoyama doesn't win one in the next year, can we start talking about him as next Yokozuna material? Now down to the final 3. Now any of these guys could have been number 1, but I felt that this sort of was the order I had to go in for this year. Number 3. Takakelsho. Takakelsho's journey this year has been wonderful. Takakelsho started with 11 wins, very strong to start the year, then got a Make Koshi in March, then we had the no tournament, and then when he came back, only got the 8 wins and then went Kyujo. What's going to happen to Takakelsho? Well, he ended up getting a Jun Yusho and Yusho to finish out the year. Very, very strong. And he's on the cusp of Yokozuna promotion, and he ended up winning the most matches in the entire year with, I think, 52. So Takakelsho would be an amazing story. If he can pull off the Yusho win in January, he will be the youngest Yokozuna we've had since I've started watching. He's only 24. He will be the only second Japanese Yokozuna since I've started watching. And of course, we've only had Kisano Sato in the past 10 years or so be a Japanese Yokozuna. I mean, we all know what I think of Takakelsho, but I think his sumo has in fact grown and will continue to grow. It's just his sumo is always going to be limited by his body. But I've never seen a Yokozuna with a body like that, and I'd be fascinated to see that shape, put on that belt, do a Dohyo Iri, and hang out at Yokozuna for 6-7 years. Number 2, Terunofuji. He started the year in Juryo, ended up getting a Juryo Yusho, then having to spend another tournament in Juryo, then came up, and then from Maegashira 17 won a tournament, our second Maegashira 17 Yusho. Very different, though. When you are a person who's already had a great deal of success, having the comeback doesn't feel like quite the same surprise. But it also means your ceiling will probably be much, much higher. What's Terunofuji's ceiling? And how many more Basho does he have in the knees? If he has like another year, I think he makes Ozeki. If he has maybe 2 more, maybe Yokozuna? The question is going to be, the older he gets, and the worse and worse his joints get, how willing is the Sumo Association going to be to promote someone to the ranks where you can start taking tournaments off when they already have so many pre-existing injuries? That's not to say they wouldn't promote Terunofuji, but I think if they ever promote Terunofuji to Ozeki and or Yokozuna, it would have to be an undeniable push. And finally, the number 1 Rikishi of 2020, Shodai. Yeah, I'm as surprised as you are. At the beginning of the year, no one knew boss-level Shodai was going to be an option, but look, it ended up being a thing. I mean, like, you know what I think. We did 3 episodes on Shodai back when he won the Yusho. I think his sumo has gotten to a point where it is incredibly consistent. Hopefully, his ankle comes back very, very strong, and he can show the same sumo he was showing earlier in the year. Otherwise, he may have a very, very brief stay at Ozeki. Hopefully, gotta be an optimist about this, he comes back very strong and can pull off another Yusho. Now, will 2021 be the year of Shodai? I think somehow no. But let's not let that take anything away from the year Shodai has had. Now, these 5 wrestlers in the rankings, these are the 5 I think are going to be fighting in 2021 for the role of Sumo Alpha Dog. Right now, the throne seems pretty vacant. At least until Hakuho starts showing up to consecutive tournaments. So, the 5 people I mentioned, who do you think is going to take 2021 by storm? Let me know. Alright, thank you so much. This has been a very, very weird year. I made a New Year's resolution to sort of commit more to the YouTube channel, and I thought that this was going to be something for artistic ventures I did, and some of the music I like to play. And, you know, as a hobby, maybe I'll do a sumo show. And so, of course, what ended up drawing the most viewers? The sumo. So I want to thank all of you for coming out to the dohyo and checking in on this sort of weird particular brand of idiocy that we're doing here in my living room. If you like the channel, please like, subscribe, comment, share the dohyo with all of the friends and family. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, an excellent New Year, a festive solstice, a wonderful Kwanzaa, a peaceful Bodhi, and a scary Krampusnacht. And if I've forgotten anything else, please have a peaceful and wonderful winter. All right, I'll see you back in the new year with more exciting sumo fun. I will see you next time on the dohyo. Jingling out.